Discourse. We all know what I mean when I say this word. It could be anything from gameplay discussions to shipping wars. It is something that many people engage in, sometimes in healthy ways and other times in not so healthy ways. We've all seen how out of hand online discourse can become, and the question that always springs to my mind is, how did it get this bad? Why do people make something their whole personality and attack those who disagree with them? And before you feel attacked and start angrily typing in my comments, I have been here too. I have definitely taken something someone has said online about a thing I've liked and taken it personally. So it's not like I'm looking to shame people for doing this. I think most people engaging in online discussions have found themselves getting into the discourse to an unhealthy degree. Today I want to dive into why this happens and hopefully shed some light on this topic. Welcome to the psychology of online discourse. So I'm not going to do a retrospective of discourse or anything like that for this video. If you've seen my other psychology videos, I take a much more narrative focus when I do those because it's a character and I like to walk through their journey. But for this video, I really just wanted to sit down and talk about my experiences and kind of try to conceptualize why these things get so bad, or at least like a potential reason for why they get so bad. I really want to get straight to my point rather than build up to it, so I apologize if you were strapping in for a history of online discussion. That's not going to be the point of this video. I'm trying to be as succinct as possible so I can get right into the meat of the discussion. So to kind of lay it all out for you, I think online discourse has a lot to do with personal identity, really in just how people find their sense of self through different characters or franchises. And so when they feel like someone is criticizing that thing, it feels like a criticism on who they are as a person. When someone says, hey, this game is bad because it's worse than this other thing, someone who likes this game feels attacked. What do you mean this is bad? It means so much to me. It was literally formative for me. And then in that response, right, they fight back. You can swap out games with ships, franchises, TV series, really anything, right? And you can start to see a pattern that probably seems all too familiar. These discussions are typically hinged on three things that ultimately set up any kind of meaningful discussion for failure. These are dualistic thinking, overgeneralization, and all or nothing thinking. We'll leave the discussion of personal identity for the end as we wrap up, but these three things I think play a huge role in how people engage in discussions online and how they can become so intense and toxic at times. For the purposes of this video, I will probably use examples from the Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy communities since I've experienced these firsthand, and it makes it easier than just using general examples like X game or X ship, right? I can kind of put a name to something rather than trying to be all like general. Dualistic thinking is probably the best place to start. This line of thinking is probably best explained as binary thinking, on and off. It's either good or bad. There isn't really an in-between nuance with this line of thinking. I see this often online, and I'm sure you've seen it yourself. Do you think Kingdom Hearts 3 was good or bad? Do you think Cloud should be with Tifa or Aerith? Now see, the danger isn't necessarily with the idea that there are only two options. Yes, it may be a little narrow-minded to assume this, but the trouble with this type of thinking is that it inherently assumes that one option is right and the other is wrong. With this type of thinking, you get examples like, if you think Kingdom Hearts 3 is good, then those who think it is bad are either ill-informed or just trying to trigger you. If you think Cloud should be with Tifa, then those who think otherwise don't understand the story or are mischaracterizing Tifa or Cloud. See, dualistic thinking hedges people into one or the other, leaving out all nuance. If we take this further with Kingdom Hearts 3, it can't be discussed because if you disagree with my opinion, I've essentially shut off taking in any information that you can give me. I think the game is good, and I can't take in the idea that someone might like the game but have criticism because that would be too complex for my worldview to accept. Now, as I've been laying this out, you might be thinking, well, I don't do that, and that's good if you don't. There are different viewpoints such as multiplistic and relativistic that people usually develop into. Multiplistic, like the name implies, is the ability to take in multiple perspectives and see things from another viewpoint and consider other people's perspectives. Relativistic is the idea that everyone's truth is theirs to believe and that everyone can be right in their own ideas of right and wrong. As we develop, we should be shifting into these more nuanced mindsets, but for a lot of people, they stay in that dualistic thinking. Which leads me into my next topic, overgeneralization. So I want to give a story actually for this part because I think it best encapsulates what I want to get across. So one time I was in a store when I was in high school, way long ago, and I saw a cold brew for sale that looked good. And when I drank it, I almost threw up. It was quite literally probably one of the worst things I'd ever tasted. Turns out actually it was just a really unfortunate mistake of it being expired and going bad. I just didn't look into it more. I threw it away and never considered buying another one because I thought they would all taste like that, right? I just internalized, wow, that was that was really bad. I'm never doing that again. It wasn't until I got out of high school and was dating my wife in college, dating the person that would be my wife later on when I was in college. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Anyways, she bought the same drink. I told her, like, wow, that was really bad. It was so awful. And she just gave me a really funny look and was like, did it go bad? It usually tastes really good. I didn't believe her, but I tried it when she offered me a sip, and I was really surprised by how good it tasted. I had been so convinced by that first interaction that what I had tasted was disgusting and immediately assumed every single cold brew was bad. I know this seems like a silly story, but we do the same thing with our other interactions as well. It's a common occurrence after a couple negative interactions that you might generalize a whole genre or group of the fandom. Take shipping, for example. The amount of times I've seen shipping discourse and one ship demonize another is honestly too many to count at this point. It is easy for a brain to write off a bad interaction, and it only furthers that dualistic thinking. Oh, you like this ship? Well, I've had bad experiences with those fans, so you must be just as bad. Or, oh, you like KH2? I had bad experiences with other KH2 fans, so you must be just as bad. So I'm not going to listen to you and further convince myself that KH3 is superior, and anyone who likes KH2 is toxic and is just trying to tear KH3 down. Now, that might sound crazy, but I've seen that type of thinking happen firsthand. It essentially amplifies that dualistic thinking further and creates that divide of us versus them. Which brings us to the last piece of thinking that compounds all of this. All or nothing thinking is this idea that pulls all nuance out of everything. You're either for something or against something. You either like a game or you hate it. There's no middle ground to be had with this type of thinking, and it's hard to understand that others might have a different way of thinking as well. There's no middle ground to be had with this type of thinking. It's hard to understand that others might even have a different way of thinking. This one doesn't need too much explanation and probably sounds like the other two concepts we've talked about, but really it's this very stringent thinking that boxes people into certain beliefs or ideas. It's why you see people wholeheartedly praising something and not being able to handle other people criticizing the things that they like. It is offensive to them that someone would think the thing they liked is bad because there's no nuance. In their head, the game is good. There can't be flaws because that would break down their structure of thinking. Same with people that don't like a game. They will continue to point at the flaws and have a hard time acknowledging a game did something well. These three concepts, dualistic thinking, overgeneralization, and all or nothing thinking, meld into this like super stan, super hater mentality. It turns the online discussion into a war zone because a large majority of people see the world in this way. So if you have someone that thinks that KH3 is good, and someone that thinks that KH3 is bad, then you can see how that can get out of hand. Both people trying to convince the other that their way of thinking is right, and when that doesn't work, demonizing the other side and turning to insults, doxing, or worse. And you think I'm kidding, but literally as I'm writing this, I saw a tweet asking people not to harass them or DM them shocking, gruesome pictures, all because this person criticized a video game. Why does this happen though? It's one thing to think that another person is wrong, but where does their vitriol come from? Well, early in the video I talked about how people take it as a personal attack when they see criticism or beliefs that contradict their own. This happens because people have a hard time separating their interests from their identity, which honestly is understandable. Media has a way of being able to impact the values and beliefs that we hold, either by challenging them or resonating with them. It can go either way, but typically our walls come down regardless when we are engaging in something entertaining. So our beliefs and values are impacted either with us agreeing or disagreeing with the medium, but because it hits on such a fundamental level, it can get very easily tied up in our identity. This compounds with online communities, where we search out and group together with other like-minded people typically. That isn't necessarily a problem, but what tends to happen is it becomes an echo chamber, reinforcing those beliefs and ideas. It further becomes a part of our identity. So when something opposes that, we feel this urge to protect ourselves because it feels like we ourselves are being attacked. The line between media and identity gets blurred, and when we go to push back, we don't see another human on the other side of that conversation, we see an enemy. Our mind generalizes and shifts our focus to, I need to hurt or anger this person just as much as they hurt or angered me, because I need to get back at them for trashing this game, by trashing me. And that is how discourse balloons out of control. With anonymity on the internet, people stop seeing others as people and just see avatars or screen names. It's very easy to create that us versus them mentality. Nuance in discussions screech to a halt most of the time because the topic at hand becomes how bad the other side is, not about the actual initial discussion. I used Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy as examples because that is what I'm familiar with, but this happens everywhere. Also, I created this video not to call people out, but to create some insight. Like I've said throughout the video, I've been in the same line of thinking myself, and it's really easy to fall into. The point of this video was to create insight, to help people understand why they take it so personally when someone critiques something they like. It's normal to feel that, but when you clap back or demonize the people you are arguing against, it creates a cycle of discourse that doesn't help anyone. I hope this brief discussion on discourse was helpful, and helped give you words to some of the things you may experience or see online. Anyways, I usually talk about the psychology of video game characters rather than this kind of meta discussion on discussion, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. If you want to, you can check out my other videos. They're much less meta, very much focused on narrative. So yeah, hopefully the vibes are a little bit different for this one, but it's still me talking about psychology. A huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. They'll be on screen right now. If you want to support my channel, this is a great way to help me pay editors and keep upgrading my quality. Every little bit is so incredibly helpful. Anyways, subscribe or share this, and I will see you on the next video.